As a 28-year-old man, I recently became embroiled in intense family conflict, which made me question the foundations of trust and loyalty within my family unit. My father, whom I've looked up to as both a mentor and a business collaborator for more than 10 years, revealed shocking news that devastated me. To give you some background on my dad, a 60-year-old man has dedicated his life to running a small diesel mechanic workshop. From a young age, I was captivated by his profession, often assisting him during weekends. After obtaining my degree in automobile engineering, I joined the family business at the age of 23. Over time, as I worked side by side with my father as a mechanic, I assumed leadership of the workshop. Initially, the business comprised merely 2 part-time mechanics and a single vehicle. Through my expertise and innovative approaches, we expanded the operation to include over 35 employees and 15 vehicles, increasing our annual revenue from $250,000 to almost $7 million in the last decade. While my father focuses on the practical work in the workshop, I've taken on a role more centered around the office. I've spent the last 10 years devoted to developing our family business from scratch, firmly believing that I would eventually inherit the outcomes of our collective efforts. The business turned into my passion, through which I've navigated numerous challenges, overcome obstacles, and celebrated numerous successes with steadfast dedication. My older brother, Andrew, now 40, chose a path in accounting in the city following his university education. He never took an interest in our father's business. Embarrassed by our father's mechanic profession, he often denied it in social settings. Despite my enthusiasm for automobiles and my specialized education, Andrew dissuaded me, asserting it would lead nowhere and advised me to seek a more prestigious career. Regardless of Andrew's detachment and embarrassment, my father always preferred him, a bias not always evident as my father initially showed equal affection toward us. However, when Andrew fell ill with pneumonia at 15 and was bedridden, warned by doctors of the potential seriousness of his condition, our family faced a terrifying period. I was scared of losing my brother, and during his hospitalization, Andrew and our father bonded deeply. Even after Andrew's recovery, my father's partiality toward him intensified, despite Andrew's growing disinterest in the mechanic trade. My father remained undeterred, continuing to show him favoritism. As I matured, I became acutely aware of this preferential treatment and felt understandably aggrieved. For instance, there was a time my school organized an award ceremony to honor me with an award, an occasion that filled me with immense pride. I shared the news with my parents, my mother embraced me, and my father offered his warm congratulations. I mentioned that parents were invited to the ceremony, but knowing my mother's commitments due to her night shifts at the hospital, I looked expectantly at my father, hoping he would attend. He hesitated, glancing at my mother, who inquired if he could make it. Clearing his throat, he admitted he had arranged to play basketball with Andrew. My mother, visibly angry, told him that playing basketball wasn't important, and he could take Andrew to my awards ceremony instead. My dad agreed, albeit begrudgingly. The night before the event, during dinner, my mother reminded my dad to attend my ceremony. Andrew, overhearing this, asked if my dad was canceling their basketball practice. My dad explained that they could play basketball the following week. Andrew expressed his discontent, saying he was looking forward to father-son time and didn't want to waste it on my ceremony. My mother retorted that Andrew, as my big brother, should be more understanding and supportive, emphasizing that my dad needed to be there for me this one time. On the day of the event, I reminded my dad before leaving for school, and he assured me he would be there. However, during my award ceremony, I couldn't find him anywhere. When my name was called, I went up to the stage, received my award, and looked for my dad in the crowd, but he never showed up. I sent a message to my mother, who called me concerned. She couldn't believe he hadn't shown up, especially since she had set 5 alarms on his phone. Furthermore, she noted his car wasn't parked in front of our house, indicating he was definitely out. At this point, we were alarmed and concerned, thinking something might have happened to him. When I reached home after school, I opened the door to see my mom and dad having a huge argument. They were shouting at each other at the top of their voices, and the air was thick with tension. The heated exchange between my parents echoed through the hallway. My mother, her face contorted with anger, stood near the entrance, while my dad, looking both guilty and defensive, was attempting to justify his actions. Feeling a mixture of confusion and concern, I cautiously stepped into our living room. I curiously asked my dad if he was okay. I worried palpable as I mentioned that he never showed up at my school for the award ceremony. The room fell silent for a moment. My dad, trying to avoid eye contact, mumbled an apology, something about losing track of time and unforeseen circumstances. I sensed that his explanation wasn't adding up, but before I could press further, my mother unleashed a torrent of frustration and disappointment. "Why did you not show up, John?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Tell me the truth. Our son won an award, and you promised him you would be there. What could be more important than that?" Dad shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware that he was in the hot seat. Before he could respond, Andrew entered the room with an air of nonchalance, eating an ice cream. My mother turned her gaze toward Andrew, her eyes narrowing in disbelief and anger. "And what's your role in all of this, Andrew? Where were you and your dad, and why didn't you support your brother on his big day?" Andrew, with a shrug that exuded indifference, muttered something about suddenly craving ice cream and asking our dad to drive him to the ice cream shop. They later drove to my school, but were informed they had missed the award ceremony, so they drove back home. My mother's face turned from anger to incredulity as she processed this absurd excuse. "You skipped your brother's award ceremony for ice cream," she exclaimed incredulously. "You and your father missed his big moment because you wanted ice cream." Amidst the escalating tension, my dad, instead of apologizing and admitting his mistake, tried to defend Andrew and justify his actions, stammering out an explanation that only added fuel to the fire. "Look, it's not a big deal," he began, attempting to downplay the significance of my award ceremony. "It's just an award ceremony, and there will be more in the future. Andrew wanted an ice cream, and I thought we could just grab a quick one. I didn't think it was such a big deal." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own father, the person I had expected to be there to share in my joy, was diminishing the significance of my achievement. The dismissive tone and the casual brushing aside of a moment I had been looking forward to left me speechless. As his words hum in the air, my initial shock turned into a potent mix of frustration and sadness. A lump formed in my throat, and I felt the sting of unshed tears. My achievement, the recognition for my hard work and dedication, was being swept aside as inconsequential. At that moment, I realized that it wasn't just about missing the ceremony. It was about the lack of understanding, the absence of support, and the crushing feeling that my accomplishments were not valued by those I held closest. I looked at my dad, who was supposed to be a source of encouragement, with a mix of disbelief and betrayal. My eyes mirrored the profound disappointment I felt in my heart. My mother continued to express her disappointment, scolding them both for prioritizing an impromptu ice cream craving over a significant milestone in my life. As their argument raged on, I felt an increasing sense of betrayal and hurt, a heavy weight on my chest, and a lump in my throat. I mustered a weak smile and told my dad, "It's okay, Dad. Don't worry about it." The words tasted bitter on my tongue, forced out to mask the deeper emotions swirling within me. I didn't want to escalate the argument or add more strain to the already tense atmosphere. As I retreated to my room, the facade I had maintained for my dad crumbled. The door closed behind me, shutting out the outside world, and I allowed the floodgates to open. The tears I had held back in front of my parents streamed down my face. The weight of the disappointment, the hurt, the profound sense of being let down overwhelmed me. My mom, seeing me upset, came into my room to comfort me. She sat beside me, putting her arm around my shoulder. She didn't say much, just let me cry and vent my feelings. Her presence was reassuring, and I felt a bit better knowing she was there for me. After a while, she spoke gently. "I know it hurts, sweetheart. Your dad messed up, and I'm sorry you had to go through this. Sometimes people make mistakes, but it doesn't take away from your achievement. You worked hard for that award, and nothing can change that." Her words were like a warm hug for my soul, and I began to feel a little lighter. She stayed with me until I calmed down, assuring me that despite the disappointment, I was still valued and loved. There are so many instances where my dad has shown clear favoritism towards my brother over me. My mother has had several conversations with him regarding this. My dad always listens and makes an effort to be more involved with me, but it never lasts long, and he ultimately goes back to being super dedicated to Andrew. It's like a pattern that I've noticed throughout my life. Despite these moments of partiality, I've always tried hard to win my dad's approval. I have a genuine interest in his work and, in particular, developed a deep love for cars, partly because it seemed like something he valued. Even though it often felt like a one-sided effort, I kept hoping that my efforts would eventually make a difference and earn me the recognition and approval I longed for. I craved recognition from my dad, but last year, he filed for divorce from my mother, citing irreconcilable differences. This marked the beginning of a challenging chapter in our family's life. I knew that the arguments between my mother and dad had worsened over the years, but I never imagined they would divorce. It was a difficult time for us as a family. Since then, my dad has dated several young women. 5 months ago, my dad called my brother, Andrew, and me for an important dinner. We sat down at the dinner table, tense and anticipating what was coming next. With a serious expression, my dad finally spoke. "I have something important to share with you both. Jessica and I got married." He looked at us, seemingly expecting joy or acceptance. Andrew and I exchanged stunned glances. Jessica, his latest girlfriend, was only 29 years old, just a few years younger than me. Our shock was evident, but my dad continued, oblivious to our surprise. He explained how he had found love again with Jessica and how she brought joy and excitement into his life. I couldn't believe that my dad had decided to get married without even inviting us to his wedding or discussing it with us. But my dad didn't just stop with that announcement. He went on to say how proud he was of the business he had created and grown over the years, and then he mentioned the succession plan of his business. I waited with bated breath for him to share his plans. My dad turned to look at me and said, "I have thought long and hard about this and decided that since you aren't married yet and have no children of your own, you should forget about inheriting the family business from me." I looked at him, confused, as he went on to say that he had decided to hand over the entire business to my brother Andrew. Shock and disbelief washed over me as I grappled with the weight of this unexpected betrayal. It felt like a sucker punch to the gut, and the trust I had in my father began to crumble. Fury and betrayal bubbled within me as my dad dropped this bombshell. My entire world, built over a decade of hard work and dedication, was crumbling before my eyes. I stared at him, my jaw tight, unable to comprehend the magnitude of his decision. "Why?" I finally managed to utter, seething with a mix of anger and hurt. "I dedicated my life to this business. I built it with you. How can you just hand it over to Andrew?" Dad, seemingly unfazed by the storm he had unleashed, explained his reasoning. "Andrew has a family, a wife, and kids. He needs the financial stability, and I believe he can take the business to new heights." His words hung in the air, and I felt the weight of his favoritism crashing down on me once again. I struggled to keep my composure, my hands clenched into fists. "Dad, this isn't fair. I've given everything to this business. I've worked alongside you, dedicated my time and energy, and now you're just going to cast me aside because Andrew has a family. What about my future, my dreams?" His response was callous. "You can continue to remain in your position and work under Andrew, but the business goes to your brother. That's my final decision." Anger surged through me, but I bit back my retort. I turned to Andrew, hoping for some support, a shred of empathy. Instead, he remained silent, avoiding my gaze. The disappointment I felt extended beyond my father. It now encompassed my brother, who chose not to stand by me. At that moment, I felt the weight of a lifetime of favoritism crashing down on me. It wasn't just about the business. It was a culmination of years of feeling second best. The sacrifice I made, the dedication I showed, all dismissed with a casual wave. Resigned, I muttered in defeat, "Fine, Dad, if that's what you want." I turned away, the bitter taste of betrayal lingering in the air. I decided to walk out of his house without further argument. I couldn't shake the feeling of abandonment, the realization that my dad continued to favor his golden child despite how hard I had worked over him. Later, in the solitude of my home, the weight of the injustice pressed down on me. The business I considered my legacy, my life's work, was slipping through my fingers. Anguish welled up, and the room blurred as tears blurred my vision. I had never felt so alone, so discarded. I decided to call my mom, hoping that she would understand what I was going through. I told her everything that happened, how my dad favored my brother, how he took away the business from me, and how lost I felt. She was surprised and upset. "I never thought he'd do something like this," my mother said quietly, sounding sad. "To treat your brother so much better and give him the business completely, instead of dividing it equally between the both of you, is completely unfair." Her words matched exactly how I felt. I didn't mind sharing the business with my brother. But my dad had unfairly given it all to him, despite how hard I had worked over the years. As we kept talking, my mom's voice went from surprise to determination. She told me firmly, "Try not to see this as the end, but as a chance for something new. You've done amazing things, and you don't need his approval. Why don't you start your own business? You know, a lot of clients would rather work with you than your brother." Through her words, a flicker of determination ignited within me. If my dad thought he could strip away everything I had worked for, he was mistaken. The pain of betrayal fueled the silent vow. I would forge my own path and build something new from the ashes of what was taken from me. In the last 10 years, I had saved more than enough money to start my own business. As the reality of the situation settled in, I took decisive action. I reached out to more than half of the clients we had amassed over the years, mainly the ones I had recruited. These were clients I had built relationships with and earned their trust. I informed them about my dad's plan to give the entire business to my older brother and how I had decided to start my own company. The clients were as shocked as me, but surprisingly, the overall response was overwhelmingly positive. These people admired my dedication, work ethic, and the values I brought to the table. They assured me they were willing to follow me and continue our successful partnership under a new banner. The news of my departure from the family business spread throughout the industry, and some of my dad's workers even approached me, voicing their support and desire to work for me. It was like people were starting to understand that, after my dad left the business under my brother's care, it would be a sinking ship. I handed in my resignation letter to my dad, and he was shocked. He scolded me for ditching the company at such a crucial period, but I scoffed at his response and left. As the majority of the client base shifted allegiance, the once thriving family business began to crumble. Dad, caught in the crossfire of the fallout, watched helplessly as his grand plan backfired spectacularly. Over the months, my new endeavor flourished. The support from loyal clients, coupled with my expertise, allowed me to not only survive but thrive. My dad's betrayal spurred me to rise from the ashes, stronger and more resilient. The business I have built now, independent and thriving, is a testament to my tenacity. I can finally revel in the last laugh, knowing that my hard work, dedication, and resilience have prevailed against all odds. Meanwhile, I have learned from my mother that Andrew has no idea how to manage the business and is struggling to retain the remaining clients. I guess word of my success must have reached my dad because he sent me a long message yesterday. He called me an ingrate for not helping my brother and keeping the family business alive, accusing me of turning my back on the family. He wrote about facing money issues and how his new wife threatened to divorce him because he was unable to fund her lifestyle anymore. He ended the message by saying that he expected me to do the right thing by returning to the family business and bringing back all the clients I had so that I could keep our family business afloat. Update 1. Thank you for everyone's great advice and reassurance regarding my situation. To clarify a few things, I have no idea why my dad thought it would be a good idea for my brother to take on the business when we all knew that he had absolutely no idea about the family business. Andrew agreed to my father's wishes because he knew how well our business was doing and thought this would be an easy job, with me taking most of the responsibility. He had expressed previously to us that he was unhappy at his job. Hence, I am assuming that he thought I would do most of the hard work for him, while he and his family would be able to enjoy the CEO title. As for those wondering why I'm not married yet, it's simply because I've always been a bit of a loner. My life has been dedicated to my work. While I do have a girlfriend for the past 1.5 years, whom I love dearly, and we have discussed marriage as a future goal, we both agree that we want to take some time to grow as individuals before taking the next step. Regardless of my marital status, I never expected my dad to give me the entire business. In fact, I would have been okay with a 60-40th split, or even a 50-50th split between me and my brother, which would have been fair. If I didn't have any children in the future, my share of the company would have gone to my brother's kids eventually anyway, so there was no reason for my dad to be so mean and give the entire business to my brother. I did spend 10 years in this business, and I deserve to have a share in it. I also never forced any of the clients to choose me over my dad's business. They opted to work with me because I was always the one who would go the extra mile, ensuring their satisfaction and building lasting relationships. I never wanted my brother to fail or our family business to be destroyed. The business failed because my brother still didn't know the ins and outs of the business, and my dad was too busy with his new wife to focus on its clients. My dad must have assumed that I would eventually give up my business and come running back to him, asking for his forgiveness when I inevitably fail. But thanks to my hard work, I'm not only standing firm but thriving. It's disheartening to witness the downfall of a business I helped build, but it's a consequence of their own actions, not my intention. I plan on having a talk with my dad next week regarding this. When I have some free time, update 2. I finally had a talk with my dad. He called me over for dinner last weekend, expecting an apology. I went to his place, and to my shock, saw my brother Andrew sitting there waiting for me. The atmosphere was tense, but I hoped they had called me here for a resolution. My dad took a deep breath, exchanging a glance with Andrew, before dropping the bombshell. He started by saying how he was sad over what had happened between us, and he regrets that our family business was now in pieces. I raised an eyebrow, bracing myself for what was to come, expecting him to say that he had changed his mind. Instead, my dad started pressuring me to return to the family business as soon as possible, claiming he would forgive and forget if I did come back. Andrew joined in, blaming me for the business's struggles and calling me selfish for leaving him all alone to manage the business. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, you handed the entire business to Andrew without even thinking about my future. How is this my fault?" I retorted, frustration bubbling within me. Andrew scoffed. "You took most of the clients with you when you left. That's a problem." I countered. "They followed me because of the relationships I built, not because I forced them. You are welcome to try to get them back if you were so good with retaining clients. Your remaining clients would not have left the business either," I argued, feeling the weight of their accusations. My dad said, "Look, I don't want to see the family business fall apart. It's my source of income, and it's how I sustain my lifestyle. Jen has also left me because of all of this. I want to enjoy my retired life in peace instead of trying to resolve this ongoing family drama. So stop being so selfish and just come back and work for your brother." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I realized this wasn't the apology or resolution. I realized it was an effort to coerce me back into a predicament I had diligently worked to leave behind. Shocked and wounded, I stood up, glaring at my father with anger. "I'm finished with this discussion. I will gladly observe as your business declines," I stated, removing myself from the harmful dialogue. Since that conversation, I have been overwhelmed with texts and calls from both Andrew and Dad, who have been berating me and holding me accountable for all mishaps. It's deeply distressing to witness how my own family seeks to exploit my hard work, prompting me to block them for the time being. Update 3. 6 months have elapsed since my previous update. I'm delighted to share that my business is thriving, and I'm on the verge of proposing to my girlfriend, eagerly anticipating our future marriage. She is undoubtedly my soulmate, and I'm excited about our blissful union. Conversely, my father encountered difficulties as my brother's mismanagement led to the business's downfall, culminating in its sale to another entity. Regrettably, my father benefited little from the sale, and his new wife claimed what little he had during their divorce. I've maintained my distance from them, learning of these events through family friends with whom I'd occasionally converse. My relationship with my mother has strengthened over these months. Contrary to what some might think, she treats my brother and me with equal affection. She supports my decisions and endorses my new venture. She also mentioned that my brother is considering a return to accounting following the business's failure. Despite the familial challenges, I am thankful for the happiness and stability in my personal life. The support from my girlfriend and the solid bond with my mother are priceless pillars of strength. Focusing on the positives, I am resolute in my commitment to excel in my business endeavors. I am optimistic about the future and dedicated to transforming obstacles into opportunities for growth and success. Stay tuned for more updates from my life and relationships.